We're back, and we're a day late, but we're talking Pacers Raptors. Really impressive win by the Pacers with balance and reserves. We'll talk about all of that. Plus, Chris Duarte not making his shots right now. We'll talk about his struggles, what can go better, what can go worse. Is it time to panic? And at the end, we'll talk Pacers, Sixers tonight. Pacers' first road game in a while. Can they get it done against a team right in front of them in the Eastern Conference standings? All coming today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today I am back from family stuff. It's time to talk Pacers Raptors, the game from Monday. Finally got a chance to catch up on that one. We'll talk Chris Duarte, who is not making shots right now, really struggling his last 5 games. We'll diagnose his struggles a little bit, see if we can't get to the bottom of it. It looks a little bit like earlier in the season, but it's different because it's still happening. And at the end, we'll talk Pacers, Sixers tonight. Pacers' first road game in a minute against the team right in front of them in the Eastern Conference standing. Sorry for the one-day delay talking Pacers Raptors. Of course, like I said, doing a lot of family stuff over the holidays the last 2 weeks, but back on a normal schedule. And if you missed it yesterday, Trevelyan Queen, got to talk with him for about 4 minutes one-on-one for the podcast. Always good when I can run those interviews on here instead of just using them for writings and stuff. If you want to hear from Pacers two-way guard Trevelyan Queen, yesterday is your show. But today is all about the Pacers beating the Raptors again for the second time this season. Normally a team the Pacers really struggle with, that style, that bruising team, that's the size. But they've done well against Toronto this year. They win 122-114. And I got to eat crow very quickly. Not because I didn't think the Pacers could beat the Raptors or would beat the Raptors, but because I went out of my way when the Pacers beat the Hawks last week to do a whole segment on why it was a big deal that the Pacers bench played well against Atlanta and all this stuff that McConnell and Mathurin and Brissett and Smith were doing well and what it could mean. Can they sustain this stuff? That was nothing. What the bench did against the Raptors was so much more impressive for this Pacers team, making me look dumb. 1 week later, they had 42 points against the Hawks, and I literally included it in my story header, did a whole segment on it. 54 against the Raptors, and the number I accidentally almost said 47 more points than the Raptors bench. The Raptors bench had 7, and the Pacers bench had 54. Dominant stuff from Indiana's second unit. Now, granted, Nick Nurse ran his starters into the ground. They almost played 40 minutes, but the Pacers bench was really, really awesome in this game, and that was the big difference in this one because the starters for both teams were roughly even in this game. And, most Pacers starters were -1 or 0 for Hield, Turner, and Halliburton. But the bench was awesome, and that was the difference for the Pacers, and they really needed it, right? Tyrese Halliburton walking off the court is asked about the game, things that went well, and he said the second unit was awesome tonight. Kudos to them. Right? Like that was really the key for the Pacers, what got them over the hump against this Toronto team. And two guys I want to talk about that kind of led that charge. Look, a lot of them played well. 54 points is a ton for that group. But first, let's start with TJ McConnell. Obviously, Mathurin had more points. He will get talked about heavily. But McConnell finishes this game with 15. That was his second highest scoring game of the season. That's obviously massively important. He was 4 for 6 from the field. He had his 3 assists. He only turned it over once. All fantastic stuff. The way he played was great, right? The thing I talked about in the bench segment after the Atlanta game was he was hitting those little mid-rangers, that turnaround jumper that he hits that made him really threatening under McMillan and Bjorker, and that has kind of gone away the last few years. He even tried that in this game, right? All 4 of his makes were layups, and he was trying to attack the rim, right? None of that turnaround stuff. He's getting to the rim or he's passing. And that's why, 1, all 4 of his makes were easier because he was right at the rim. And 2, he had 7 free throw attempts, right? He got in there and they had to foul him. They couldn't stop him, so they had to foul him, right? That was big for him, I think. And that I don't know if that's necessarily sustainable. The Raptors' point of attack defense with their second unit was quite frankly crap. But really good credit to TJ McConnell for taking advantage of that, getting as far in as he can and making them pay without the appropriate rim protection and defense. That he was huge in this game. He played very well. Again, his second highest scoring game of the season. But Benedict Mathurin was the show. And I think balance is a key part of the Pacers story. And I'll work that in a second. But Mathurin led the way with 21 points. Only the second time this season the Pacers have won a game in which their leading scorer scores less than 22. The other one was in Toronto. They scored 99 points that game, right? This time they scored 122 without anybody scoring more than 21. The other 4 times nobody scored 22, they lost, right? So their balance was huge in this game, but Mathurin was the pace setter, the only guy over 20. He had 21, 6 for 9 from the field, hit both his threes, 7 free throws, similar to McConnell. He was driving like a madman, which was great. He didn't miss a 3. And again, 10 free throw attempts, always huge, always the key thing with Mathurin that makes his ceiling so high going forward. Like if he can get to the line like this as a rookie, when he gets better at his counters, when he gets a more threatening mid-range, when his 3 is more consistent, it's already pretty good. I mean, he's just going to be tough to guard. He's going to be so efficient. He's already efficient. And this game put it all under the magnifying glass. The Raptors could not slow him down. And he mixed in some mid-rangers in this game, to his credit, even one of them getting fouled in the first quarter. Great finishes. And the moment of the game for me and for a lot of fans, he gets tied up with OG Anunoby under the basket. He was fouled on a layup attempt. He missed a technical free throw. But there was some jawing between him and Raptors assistant coach, former NBA All-Star Jamal McGlure, great center in the days for the Hornets, especially on the defensive end. And then he went to killer mode, right? 6 minutes in the next 3.5 minutes. He had 9 points the rest of the way. That was really late in the third quarter. Nailed a nasty step back 3 after that. He looked, the look in his eyes was different, right? He went into a different mode and took over the game. And the Pacers needed those two to be awesome, right? They were fantastic. McConnell and Mathurin were among other good bench players, right? But I call them out because they were massively important to the flow of this game for the Pacers, right? 2 huge Raptors runs. They went on a 16-2 run in the first quarter. Toronto did. They were up 13. And then late in the quarter, McConnell was really good. Mathurin was good too, but McConnell was really good. And all of a sudden, the lead's only 4 at the end of the first quarter. Pacers get the lead back in the second quarter. Then the third quarter, Raptors start doing it again. 20-2 run in about a 5.5 minute stretch. They're up 8 with less than 4 minutes to go in the quarter. And then it was the Mathurin stretch that I just talked about. He was huge scoring there. That got the Pacers the lead back again. At the end of that quarter, they were ahead going into the fourth, right? Those two guys were both huge in terms of scoring, right? McConnell having his second biggest of the season, Mathurin leading the team in points in an efficient way for both of them. They also did it at a key time, right? When the Raptors looked like they were putting a grip on the game, those two guys said, no, we got this. And that was huge for the Pacers in a game in which the starters in total played even, but to open quarters, the first and third specifically, the Raptors were better. Now, I'm not trying to belittle the rest of the bench by not talking about them or stating them as important. Jalen Smith, fantastic game for Jalen Smith. 11 points, 11 rebounds, 7 offensive boards. Pacers have been miserable rebounding recently. They've lost the rebounding battle a ton since they changed the starting lineup. They dominated the glass in this game. Dominated. 36 rebounds for the Raptors total. Pacers had 35 defensive rebounds. They also had 15 offensive rebounds, almost half of which came from Jalen Smith, who had 7 on his own. Really huge game from him in that way, getting those extra possessions for the Pacers. And the Pacers on the glass, again, that's really, really huge. You got to be doing those sort of little things against a team like Toronto, and they did it, and Smith was a huge part of that. Brissett played fine, fit in. He always does decent. His shot wasn't falling, but he always does well against his former team, both defensively, resourcefully, things like that. He was a +9. We'll talk about Duarte next segment. Look, he missed all his shots. He was a +13. His defense was and has been good, but he missed all his shots. Either way, the bench was huge, and the balance part was fantastic, right? That blows my mind that this is only their second one of the season when their leading scorer doesn't reach 22 points, and the other one they scored less than 100 as a team, right? That's a rare thing for them. Everybody pitching in, 7 players in double figures. That's crazy to see. And the usual suspects in the starting 5 were really solid, right? Buddy Hield hits over half his threes for 19. Halliburton had 16 and 8, which was like, that's ho-hum for him at this stage. And 6 rebounds. Miles Turner had a double-double. Like, all those guys did their job, but it was just such a balanced attack from this Pacers team, and that was key for them. And it's interesting that they did that, but they did a really good job mismatch hunting, and I point that out to say they only had 24 assists. Like, usually you'd expect in a game full of balance, they were moving the ball well, but they were really just finding good cracks in the defense, finding matchups they liked, and taking advantage of them. The starters were solid. The bench was awesome, and the Pacers get another win. 21-17, taking care of business on your home floor. That's what threatening and good teams do. Pacers they're in that group, quite frankly, 6th in the East and playing the 5th place team tonight in Philly. We'll talk about that in our third segment, but one player did not make a shot, was not all over the stat sheet in some way like everybody else. That was Chris Duarte. He did have 4 boards. He did have 2 assists. I won't say he played awful against Toronto, but he has not made anything recently. What's going on with him? How can he get back to looking like the Chris Duarte of yesteryear? What is going on here? Let's dive into that in the next segment. Before we do that, though, let me talk to you guys about betonline.net, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, analysis, you name it, they've got it over at BetOnline. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to the basketball World Cup. It's all to college basketball. They had the World Cup all over at betonline.net. They've got their NFL lines up for this coming week. Those Saturday games, the Colts division, who's going to win it? The Jags favored by 6.5 over the Titans, for example. All those lines and more at betonline.net. They've got sports podcasts on there, the easiest way and fastest way to get your betting info. Check it out today. Head over to that website, betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. Name of the game, second listen, Toronto Raptors, Locked On Raptors with Sean Woodley. Hear his take on how the Raptors played in that game and his thoughts on the direction of that team, because, look, they are not trending the way that many thought they would, including probably internally that they thought they would. Sean Woodley will break that all down. What can the Raptors do better? What can their coaching staff do better? How can they win without playing their starters a million minutes every game? Go check out Locked On Raptors. Right now, though, we're talking about Chris Duarte. Chris Duarte against the Raptors did not hit a shot, over 4 from the field. Did get 2 free throws, 2 points, which was his first points in his last 3 games worth of appearances. And I do not mean to pile on by saying all of this stuff, but he has been extremely badly struggling from the field. I just think he also hurt his ankle in this game. And that's where I want to open with. This has to be the most frustrating season possible for a second-year player. This is not an excuse. This is a factual thing that Tyrese Halliburton, Isaiah Jackson, Duarte, other players on the team have all talked about at some point. Like, going into your second season, you can almost get too comfortable at first, right? You think you get it. You know, you got through the rookie season. Now you think you get it in the league, right? You don't relax necessarily, but it just, you feel like it's going to be easier, and it's not. It's still just as grindy and challenging, and that can be a tough hurdle to overcome. And right when Duarte got over that, he had the 30-point game. He gets hurt for the first time, and then he recovers, and he has 2 really solid games. Right, the Boston game, he was really good. 14 points, hit half his shots, hit 4 threes. Against the Knicks in his debut, he shot 40%, looked okay, and then has just not been able to get the ball in the basket ever since. And really, in those first 3 games, right, he goes 9 for 21. Like, that's not great, but that's fine. That's over 40% shooting. You know, you take that from a guy who's been recovering for a while. 8 points a game on 43% shooting, hit over 36% of his threes. Yeah, since then, just pure misery, right? And baked in that, a head injury that takes him out of a game, the same ankle injury that takes him out of a game. All this to say, that has to be such a frustrating season to never get the rhythm, to finally get out of the mental funk, just to have your season taken away. Like, everything that can go wrong has gone wrong for Chris Duarte. That said, after those first 2 games, he's been really, really, really bad offensively. And most of that is just coming down to not making shots, right? And sometimes it's that simple. But since those first 2 games that he returned, so he plays the Knicks, they lose, they go to Boston, he plays great, they win. Since those 2 games, he's 5 for 34 from the field. That's 14.7%. That is just, he's just not hitting shots at all. And right this second, to this moment I'm talking to you, he's missed 18 shots in a row from the field. He went 0 for 4 against Toronto, 0 for 5 against the Clippers, 0 for 4 against the Cavs, and 1 for 6 against the Hawks, and he made his very first shot against Atlanta. So he has missed, again, 18 consecutive shots. That is all. That again, this will sound like piling on. That is all overly dramatic for his impact, right? There are some positives baked in there. We'll talk about that in a second. But I watched all his shots since returning, including the 18 in a row. And let me categorize them for you, right? Because first of all, Duarte has become the guy with the second unit who closes 2 quarters of the game, who takes the last shots, who takes the end of shot clock shots. So of those 18 shots, 4 of them were shots he absolutely had to take, right? A half quarter at the buzzer, an end of shot clock 3, 2 end of quarter 3s, right? Like, you have to take it. It's just a shot that is required of the team to go up. Whatever, take those out of the equation, right? So then cut through the rest of them, right? And I think 6 of the shots he's taken of the remaining shots were great, fantastic. Chris Duarte should always take these shots. 2 open missed layups, one against Atlanta and one against Cleveland. 2 open, one layup where he got fouled, and 2 just wide open threes, one in the corner and one running in transition against the Clippers, right? Great shots. 3 shots that I called good process shots, but they were a little tough. A blocked corner 3 against Atlanta, a wide open pull-up long 2 against Cleveland, and then in this Raptors game, he just has, sorry, I'm sorting through a lot of stuff. He had a good layup attempt against the Raptors that was blocked by OG Anunoby. And so 6 great shots, 3 good process shots, 4 he had to shoot, right? That's 13 of his 18 shots that, to me, you keep taking those, right? That's fine. Like, that is mostly good process of the shots Chris Duarte is taking. Sorry if that was a little too in the weeds for his shots, but to me, you have to look at the process over the results, especially when it's 18 consecutive misses. Like, that is obviously stunningly bad. And I'm not trying to erase or belittle that by saying that most of those were good looks. Now, I said, something I just said is, those are shots he should keep taking. And I say that because I believe long-term they will go in. But if they don't go in, if his percentages are really this bad, he should absolutely not be taking them, right? There has to be a middle ground to be found. Now, I will say that's 13 of 18 shots. There are 5 mid-rangers that I colored red when I was tracking these shots because they were bad, right? 3 of his, between 10 and 20 footers, he's fading away over a defender. Like, those are just not good shots, and he made them sometimes last year, but not enough even this year. Not enough even last year to take them. Like, those should be cut out completely. So that is step 1 to me of getting Chris Duarte to look more like Chris Duarte. He can be aggressive. He can create space with his strong first dribble. But he takes these 4 shots sometimes that he's got to pass out of. Halliburton talked about that being something he was growing at early in the season before his first injury. He has not been doing that as well since return. He's got to get back to that. And only one of the 5 mid-rangers I typed that he took was open. Like, the other 4 were tough. He's got to be more selective with those shots if he wants to get back into a rhythm. Because that is the first thing that I think he can do better. Because, look, his defense has been good this year. Still good. And that, I still think he should be playing a fair amount, probably more than he's playing, even with these misses. It's hard to find minutes for him. Look, it's impossible, quite frankly, to find minutes for him. Buddy Hield should not play less. Aaron Nesmith should not play less. Andrew Nembhard should not play less, right? Tyrese Halliburton obviously should not play less. Like, who do you take minutes from to get him out there more? There's no good answer in the guard wing mix. And maybe they can go super small somehow to get him a few more minutes, but it's hard. But the defense has been really solid, right? I think his defense has been good this season. The defensive rating still to this point, despite all his struggles and things going on, the Pacers defensive rating still better with Duarte on the court than off this season, right? That means something, right? That is important stuff. His defensive field goal percentage, the NBA tracks that as the guy you're guarding shoots, you are guarding them, is really good on the Pacers. 42.1% defensive field goal percentage. Now, look, he guards perimeter players. Obviously, it's going to rank better than post players. That's the 3rd best defensive field goal percentage on the Pacers. Only Nembhard and McConnell are better. And there's another stat. The actual field goal percentage of the shots that player is taking, right, is 47.5%. So he's forcing misses 5% more often than the average NBA player. That's fantastic. Only 2 Pacers are better than that, and it's McConnell and Jalen Smith. His defense has been good. His on-ball defense has been good, right? That's a big part of what I talked about before the season. Now, this is not a toot my own horn, just that I view him as a 3-and-D player right now, and I think that's a lot of why, because the defense is so good. So it's hard to find a way to get him more playing time unless someone gets hurt. In fact, it's impossible to say who should play less at his position. So what do you do with this, right? This good defender who cannot make anything, but a guy you absolutely want to invest playing time resources into. All rookie team member last year, good positional fit with your core of your locked-in core of Mathurin and Halliburton and whoever else you want to throw in there. But those are the 2 obviously locked-in guys, right? If you put Turner in there, if you put Smith in there, you put Nesmith in, whatever, you can never have too many wings. Like, malleable, fits in whatever lineup they're doing. Right? This is a guy you want to invest resources. How do you make this happen? Because the hard part is, for a guy who kind of needs reps to get through a slump like this, how do you get Chris Duarte more on-ball reps? With the second unit, McConnell's creating. Mathurin's the bailout guy, the self-creation guy. Jalen Smith finishes plays. Somewhat O'Shea's in there sometimes, and then there's a 5th starter with them. A lot of times it's Halliburton, sometimes it's Hield, sometimes it's Turner. Like, the guys who need the ball. It's hard. It's really hard to find more opportunities, low-hanging opportunities to give to Chris Duarte. So there's two ways to cut through these paths. And I'm going to sound a little bit like an optimist here, and it's because I am. I still think that he will get out of this mega slump. But either way, you could either say he's got to be a little bit better and earn the shots he's taking, right? Those 5 mid-rangers, he probably hasn't earned taking those right now. The other shots he should keep taking. And that makes sense to me. But he's got to either earn the tough ones or be more willing to settle into like a shooter type role. Being this hybrid creator is hard when there's not a lot of creation opportunities. I am receptive to that. I'm also receptive to this guy is coming back from a really bad injury this season. And again, like I said, a really frustrating season. Sure. But really, he's still taking mostly good shots. And maybe I'm just an optimist for no reason because his shot making was bananas last year. He was a good, tough shot maker. He was at times the Pacers' best scoring option as a rookie, which was crazy. But to me, having some post-injury patience and general patience with the team in year one of their new era still seems fine. Like I don't think anyone is not having patience, to be totally clear. I just want to stamp that out there for me because there's a lot of questions about what is causing him to play so poorly. Do they need to make changes? What's going on? I still think exercising patience makes the most sense. Let him try to figure out what his role is, how he can have a groove with this second unit. Can he be kind of a hybrid late clock player, a little self-creator, or should he settle into more of a 3-point, not exclusive, but mostly exclusive role? Think Doug McDermott's shot profile, for example. What makes the most sense for him? I think having a little bit of patience as he sees more shots go in and the Pacers figure out how to use him better will go a long way in figuring out what the next step for him is. And last reminder, he's played 72 NBA games. Like, is there a requirement to worry in any moment about a guy at less than 100 games? I say no, but again, maybe I'm just being an optimist because his shot making was so impressive as a rookie. But look, you can't write this off because early in the season I was saying the same things I'm saying now. I like the shots Chris Duarte is taking. I think eventually they'll go in. And sure, he had that 130-point game, but outside of that, they mostly haven't gotten it, right? And at some point, the fact that they're not going in has to matter more than the process. I don't know when that point is. I'm not there yet, but there are a lot of alarming signs with his stats. With alarming is the wrong word again. I'm making this sound so doomsday and dramatic the whole time, but there are a lot of signs that maybe slight tweaks need to be made to either his shot diet or the way they get him involved. We'll see how the Pacers can figure it out, but I still think patience is a virtue in this stage of the Pacers team building process and with second-year players who've played 72 games. But we will, again, see where that ends up. If he has a couple more games like his last 4 where he cannot make anything, really got to look in the mirror and see how they can make him a more effective player. He'll have a chance to play tonight. Pacers-Sixers in the city of brotherly love. Chris Duarte is questionable. He did, again, hurt that ankle against the Raptors on Monday. We'll see if he's able to play. But let's talk about that game against Eastern Conference Player of the Month, Mr. Joel Embiid. Holy cow, has he been good. How can the Pacers neutralize the Sixers? Can they keep rolling on this win streak against a very good Sixers team? Let's talk about it. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, hey, check out Locked On Sixers, obviously, to see what the scoop is on Mr. Embiid's MVP caliber season. Just won Eastern Conference Player of the Month. Look, I don't think people realize how good Joel Embiid has been this year. Luka Doncic just went insane banana mode for 2 weeks, and Embiid still averaged more points per game in December than Luka did. Embiid is playing unbelievable this season, Joel Embiid is. And I think that is where you start the conversation, talking about the Sixers and talking about what the Pacers have to do against them. Because, he is just unbelievable. Joel Embiid this season is averaging 33.5 points and 9.8 rebounds, 4.6 assists per game, and shooting 53% of the field. You just can't stop him. You just can't. And he gets to the line 10 plus times every game, right? You just can't stop him. And no one can stop him, but Miles Turner especially can't stop him. My whole career, this has been his hardest matchup. It's a lot of centers' hardest matchup, but particularly so for Turner. And so, look, let's just get it out of the way now. Embiid's going to kick his butt, right? He has forever. He's going to kick Jalen Smith's butt. He has forever. And usually the way this has gone is there's a lot of foul trouble for Pacers bigs, which means with Isaiah Jackson currently assigned to the G League, Goga's probably going to have to play, which means Goga might get his butt kicked too. But either way, they've got to do all they can to make life as hard as possible for Joel Embiid, which is easier said than done, of course, like everything ever. But he is just so monstrously good that those bigs who might get in foul trouble, might get in position trouble, it's just going to be hard. I mean, since December 1st, Joel Embiid is averaging 36 and 10 on 55, 44, 87 splits. Like, that's insane. He is the 76ers, and playing through bigs that have struggled against him historically means the Sixers already have their game plan built. Play through Joel Embiid, see if they can't get the Pacers bigs in foul trouble, and if they can't, find a better way to make Joel Embiid involved. Now, Miles Turner could step up and have an awesome game against Embiid, but historically that has not been the case. We'll see if that is able to happen. Now, there is a rest of the Sixers team. They are really good. They have 2 losses since December 9th, right? They're approaching a month with 2 losses. They're playing awesome football right now. And for much of this season, right, not to belittle any particular stretch, but they've been really good recently. They're a better shooting team than I think a lot of people give them credit for. Despite having a couple non-shooters on their team, they're 5th in three-point percentage as a team this season. Harden above league average. Embiid's a good shooter. Maxey's over 40%. Harris, Melton, PJ Tucker, when he actually shoots, Shake Milton, and Georges Niang are all shooting well from 3 this season, right? Like, they are a very threatening team from long range, and that's what makes a 2-star team so hard to guard, is like when those 2 stars get crowded, they kick it out, bang, there's a bucket. Like, they're just really tough on offense. And they pair that with the 3rd-ranked defense in the league. Their inside the arc offense isn't so special. They're 15th in offensive rating this season, but their defense is 3rd, right? The 3rd best D in the league. Embiid's one of the best rim protectors in basketball. PJ Tucker they added. DeAnthony Melton they added. Those guys can really defend. Matisse Thybulle, huge arms defender. Like, they are scary. They are a scary, good, balanced team, and they figured out how to play. They also have Daniel House, who's a good defender. I forgot to mention him. Like, they could just play. They're a really nasty kind of team, and the way they play is really tough, grinded out, hard to beat for a team like the Pacers. Their only weakness, if you really look at stats from a weakness perspective, bottom 5 in the league and any sort of thing, they're really bad at offensive rebounding. They're not good on the offensive glass, and that is one area where the Pacers could, Jalen Smith, for example, find a way to expose them and get extra possessions, but they're bad on the offensive glass because they get back on defense, right? They say, screw that. We're going to get back and we're going to get a stop. That's why they're 3rd in defense. And I would like to remind everybody of a team that really buried themselves into that strategy, the Miami Heat. When the Pacers only scored 82 points, Tyrese Halliburton talked a lot about how it was tough because Miami would not crash the offensive glass at all. They would just get back on D. Pacers could not run in transition. They couldn't play the way they wanted. And then they did figure it out against the Heat the second time. But in that one particular game, they had no answers for the Heat getting back like that. That is going to be key against the Sixers, the half-court offense, right? Let's say that the Sixers do a great job of getting back, playing good semi-transition D and slowing that down. Pacers' half-court offense is going to be really important. Can they score on Philly's set defense, some zone stuff, whatever they mix in? Can they score? If they can't, it's going to be a tough, long night. And oh, by the way, 5 minutes into talking about the Philadelphia 76ers, their nasty defense and their MVP candidate, they also have James Harden on their basketball team, who is a dynamically changed player. He is no longer the I'm going to score and dance around everybody James Harden. He is now the I lead the league in assists per game James Harden, who is a wonderful creator with the ball. 11 assists per game. That's crazy. He almost has half of the Sixers assists every game. Like, he can just throw guys open. He's still a master dribbler. He's kind of morphed into the guy that they need him to be around Embiid. So how do you stop this team? Well, look, when they're both in there, it's hard. You got to clog the paint and kind of pray that you can make life hard on Embiid with double teams or make James Harden's reads a little tougher. You got to recover out to shooters. That's, again, all very hard stuff to do because if you help off of Melton or Tucker or Harris, you're just kind of praying they miss, right? Anything else is almost too easy. You don't clog the paint. James Harden's going to see all the passing lanes and find it. You don't clog the paint. Joel Embiid's going to have a field day inside. I don't know how you blueprint against the Sixers, but a lot of it's got to be shrinking the floor, right? And that's hard to do, especially without a bunch of big wings. Like, a lot of teams that try that strategy have a bunch of big, large players. That said, one area the Pacers can get an advantage, the bench, who's had 2 good games in the last week. Outside of the top 6-ish, I guess. I don't know what the number cutoff you want is. For the Sixers, they do not have a lot of good creators with their second unit. They stagger their stars, so it's not a huge deal. And Maxey's a great creator as well. But, the Milton, Niang, House, Korkmaz, Harrell, Thybulle group of players, that those guys are reliant on others to score. And, if you can slow down that group a little bit by slowing down whatever guys creating for them, and you can score well like the Pacers did against Toronto, that is where the Pacers could get a leg up because they do stagger those stars of Harden and Embiid. And if you can't win the second unit minutes against Philly, look, it's already a bad matchup for the Pacers. It's going to be a long, tough night in that case. So the key guys for the Pacers, whoever guards James Harden, right? So if they slow him down, they can make it a 1-star opponent instead of a 2-star opponent. The shooters are important. Nesmith, Dembar, Duarte. If they're not hitting, the Pacers might just have no chance to keep up. And Halliburton in the half court, right? Can he make the Pacers a half court and transition team, or is it going to take, a Herculean effort from somebody else? And the centers, it's going to be tough. Joel Embiid's amazing. I think he should be higher in the MVP ladder than most people have him. They've got to be tough. They've got to try their best to keep him off the block and make his life hard. But if they figure out how to do it, a lot of other teams will come calling asking for advice. So we'll see how this one goes. I think this is one of the worst matchups for the Pacers in the league. They lost by 14, 16 to this team. That was early in the season. That was not the same Pacers team we see now. And I think the Pacers are a good shooting team, right? And if Buddy Hield can be lights out like he has been for forever, and Halliburton can continue to be a weapon, they can play with anybody. But the Sixers are a particularly tough matchup for them. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they try to overcome said matchup because they are very good at responding to challenges, and they have been all season. We'll break down this game on tomorrow's Locked On Pacers, what went well and didn't, the storylines from the game, all sorts of stuff like that. Now caught up to the Pacers schedule. Looking forward to talking Pacers, Sixers. At the end of the week, we'll talk Blazers and look ahead at that action when the time comes. Thank you guys a ton for listening. Hope you had a great New Year. Since this is my first time talking on this podcast since New Year's actually happened. We're here in 2023 doing 5 days a week covering this Pacers team just like we always have. Thank you guys a ton for listening. Have a great rest of your day. We will see you tomorrow.